Hi everyone. So the hyena has moved away and it hasn't come back, and our wild dog is resting as best as it possibly can. We had one more vehicle that came to join us in the sighting, and he was saying that several days ago, 2-3 days ago, this wild dog was just a little bit farther north from where we are, and that he thinks it was the same hyena, was also there sort of near it. So this hyena is aware of this dog enough. We have been sitting here quietly, and he hasn't really moved. There's been a hippo in the water that's been rolling around and busy getting ready to move out. And Senzo and I were thinking that it's possible that he might move this way and sort of investigate this wild dog, but we're not quite sure. We're doing our best to be as unobtrusive as possible and as quiet as possible, and it seems as if this dog is okay with where we are positioned and how quiet we're being, and we're not interfering with him too much. We've also given him enough of a distance that if anything more were to start harassing him again, we're not interfering. The thing that happened earlier, as opposed to anything else, and again, we try not to interfere at any point, but unfortunately the movement of the vehicles had a slight effect. But he, as you know, he did come back and then just has decided for now that this is not where he wants to be. There's our gray heron that has flown into the scene. Kristen, you're curious to know, with this injury, what would it be able to catch and feed on? It would eat things like grasshoppers, and it would eat things like possibly lizards. Right now, what's keeping it alive is the water. So I believe humans can go up to 3 weeks without having food as long as they have water. But our metabolism is not as high as a wild dog's, so the wild dog has less time for it. But again, getting back to the story that Tristan was telling me about the wild dog that had the 2 back legs that stopped functioning and just the front legs, he was saying that wild dog ate grasshoppers and lived for quite a while, grasshoppers and lizards. So there's a possibility. Also, I want to just add in here as well, if the pack does decide to come back to this dog at all and check on it, they haven't been calling. They were calling to each other the other morning, but they haven't been calling the couple of times I've seen this dog today. They had eaten something they would regurgitate for him, which would help. But I don't know if that's just something that could happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. That pack, the Investec and Bali breakaways with that collared male from the Ngala pack, they have a very large traverse area. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head exactly the hectareage or acreage size of it, but it's quite large. So it's also important that they move enough within their territory to keep themselves safe and keep away from things like lion and large clans of hyena and anything else that could possibly injure them. And also, again, because their metabolism is so high, they have to constantly be feeding. So I was actually pretty convinced that this was going to be the last day for the dog. But then after the interaction with the hyena today, and as well as the fact that it's made it down towards the water, I'm going to start agreeing more with Rexon, who thinks that this dog's going to have a better chance. And then I was also thinking about it. My sister, when I was a little kid, my older sister had a 3-legged dog, and that 3-legged dog had a very good life and was fine. So I think that maybe if this injury is new enough, it's just a bit painful. I think as the pain starts to decrease, if this dog is still alive, that it might be able to carry on. You never know. Swapna, you're curious to know if wild dogs recover from injuries given time. Swapna, in my time as a guide, I've seen wildlife come back from what we as humans would consider a debilitating injury. And I've seen it time and time again, specifically more with lions, but I think I've just been my experiences have just been more with them in the injury point of view. So I do think that with time, that the possibility of him getting through this injury is a possibility. The problem of from what I can see, I'm going to use my shoulder as an example. It looks like the whole thing is possibly broken at the bottom and dislocated from the top. So every time it tries to move, or like the hyena was chewing on the paw earlier, it's hurting the whole leg. So it needs to either, this is gonna sound awful, it needs to either like come off and sort of heal, which is very difficult for it to happen, or it needs to be able to move and function without constantly hitting that leg. But because the back legs are so long, it's very difficult for that to happen with the type of terrain we have. So the possibility of continuing or aggravating the injury or possibly re-injuring it is higher. So I think if in a week he is still alive and has not re-injured the injury, it's more of a possibility. But the next sort of 3 or 4 days will let us know for sure. But yeah, I mean, everything's 50-50. You never really know. He's changing positions a bit. All right, so we are only going to stay with this dog for another minute or two, and then we're going to leave him be and just let him try and get through the night. Let's head on over to James, who wants to lighten up our situation from our rather harrowing experience that we're dealing with now.